Good morning. Today we're going to do a little painting on complementary colors. Complementary colors are color opposites. That means on the color wheel, they're directly across. Anywhere you go, they're directly across. We're going to talk about why that's important and why that can make for some cool stuff. First of all, I wanted to quickly talk about monochromatic colors. Monochromatic colors are when you do a painting and you're using just one color. Now, why in the world would you do that? Let's say I'm just going to take, I like you to do this too, take any one color and go ahead and paint it in right here. We're not going to do this painting, I just want to talk about a monochromatic color, just one color in your painting. Well, it gives you one specific thing you want to say. It's usually cool or it's usually warm. It usually maybe has some type of emotion associated with it. Like with blue, I feel calm. Oh, I got that wet. With blue, I feel calm and cold. Maybe I wanted a red painting, so you feel kind of fired up and stuff like that. So it has a very, very specific thing you have to say. Where would you see this? A car ad. You might see a car ad. Everything's red, black, and white. You have black and white as well, of course. You'll see this in some very dramatic, very specific pieces of fine art here and there. It's definitely used. It's not as common, but you have a specific thing you want to say, and then you want to say it. You can use darks and lights to say it. I wanted to show you some samples really quick. Just as a review, you're always using your black and your white. Just as a review, if you do have white with your color is called a tint, black with your color is called a shade, and then gray with your color is called a tone. So you have white, black, and then gray to work with. Here's a pretty little painting. This is maybe what you would do if you were here at school and we had time for this. Here's a pretty little monochromatic turtle by Miss Barnhart. I wanted to show you this painting. This is not monochromatic. You see there's a couple different colors going on in here. This is actually a different type of a painting, not monochromatic. And also because they also isolated colors, you see blue only in the background and blue-green on the turtle, so not monochromatic. Back to monochromatic. Here we have a little wolf. These are student samples. Pretty cool looking moose that somebody did. Very cool looking rhinoceros. Look at that. And see just the kind of the dry brush and how good that looks, and some scumbling and how great that looks. You don't have to paint every detail to make it feel like it's detailed. This is just an exercise. I was showing the kids what to do. So every class I painted the same thing but in different colors. So monochromatic orange with green, or that gets blue-green, with a red-violet, and then a blue. So anyway, monochromatic just has a very specific thing you want to say. So one color kind of says it all. And it's used a lot in advertising and fine art as well. Okay, meanwhile, back to our complementary colors. So complementary colors, anywhere you go on your color wheel, directly across from each other. It's down here. I have a favorite color, as you know, which is my red-violet. So if I have red-violet here, directly across is going to be yellow-green. Now the mixed colors are on one side of the paint box. Remember I told you the primaries and secondaries are on this row with the black, and then the tertiaries are all in this other row, including this mixing red over here. Anyway, so I want to use my red-violet. So I'm going to get a little bit of my red-violet, and I'm going to paint it here. You're going to paint in the two colors you've chosen to use for your project. Anywhere you go, directly across each other on the color wheel. Directly across from red. I don't have a choice on this. Once you've decided what color you want, you get the color directly across, which is yellow or green. The reason I put the pieces of tape in my palette like that is because I don't want to accidentally get the wrong color while I'm working on this type of a painting. So I would strongly recommend something like this. Kind of label those two colors. You don't grab for the wrong one. I don't accidentally go for the other green or something like that. So I've chosen my two colors. There's lots of great choices. If you like the Lakers, you have yellow and violet here. If you love Christmas, you have green and red. Red, orange, and blue-green is real pretty. It really doesn't matter. Blue and orange is real popular with sports teams. So anywhere you go on the color wheel, something that's directly across. So what you have is these two colors have nothing to do with each other. So you have a high amount of contrast. It's like, that's why Christmas looks so bright and crazy, is because red and green are opposites. Because they have nothing to do with each other, like contrast, like black and white of the color world, anywhere you go, very, very strong contrast, it catches your attention. If I'm doing a painting in the forest, if I have a little person, I want you to see that person, I'll paint them red, because the rest of the painting's mostly green. So you take advantage of this to create attention, create something dynamic, and so on. The other thing mentioned, of course, that you can also do with complementary colors is you can make a brown. Anywhere you go, if you mix two opposites, it makes brown. So my yellow-green mixed, I don't know if you can see this, mixed with some red-violet is going to make a brown color. You can see I just made a brown up there. If it's not brown, it's a little bit more towards the green, so I'm going to add a little bit more red-violet and brown it up a little bit. Anyway, so that's how this whole thing works. The reason we make a brown out of our two colors is that way this brown harmonizes with the painting. It's a brown that goes with the painting instead of bringing in a random brown that has nothing to do with my colors. Okay, so I'm selecting a couple colors, and then we're going to do a non-objective painting. I wanted to show you that in this packet of watercolors you have 4 different types of watercolor paper. The paper that's right up front, this is the paper you used for your techniques. It's a lot cheaper than the other papers. It's not as nice. Also, you'll notice that it's easier for the surface to kind of tear and kind of get damaged and so on, where these other papers are all sturdier than this front one. So I just decided to use the second type of paper in this packet, which is has more texture to it. Like I said, there's 4. So there's the one up front, there's the second one, there's some that are larger, and then way in the back there's some that are a little smaller. 4 different kinds. So look for the second one. That's what we're going to use for this next painting. It has actually 2 textures on it. One texture shows more of a grid, and one is more of a soft look to it. I prefer the soft side correctly. You could use either side you want. It's kind of nice it has 2 sides. Okay, this is going to be a non-objective painting, which means that it's not going to look like anything in particular. I'm going to draw a design on it with my ruler, and just non-objective. So some type of something with some lines. So let's say I'm just going to start. I think at this point, that's a pretty dark line. You could go a little bit lighter with your lines. I'm going to go a little lighter here. You're going to make at least 15 sections. Let me stop and show you some samples before we go any further. This is one in progress, but this is the 2 colors I've chosen. Here's a nice little painting that is red and green. And notice how there's a center of interest. If you have one square, you leave white. That could be at the center of interest. Also, where your brightest color is near your other brightest color, bam, center of interest, and you're automatically drawn there. Most of these have a decent center of interest. I just wanted you to see the colors on this one, the blue and orange. Here's something a student did once with yellow and violet. Here's one, the orange and blue again. I just wanted you to see how the oranges are grouped and then the blues are grouped, and you get a little bit of motion this way. So even though we're doing a non-objective painting, you can still get a center of interest, that's right here, and you can still get movement when you group your colors together. This is a really nice student sample. They added some black here, which you could add a little black today to this assignment. But look how strong their center of interest is. The brightest color next to the brightest color. They also have a really light next to a dark. A lot of excitement is happening right around this particular area. Here's another one. This is just a different type of paint with the red, violet, and the yellow, green, and here's another one. Anyway, so you're getting the idea. It's going to be non-objective. We're going to just draw some lines and make some kind of design on our paper, and then paint in all the different shapes that we've created. So you're just going to, you can really make a highly structured one, but you could also make it somewhat controlled, you know, controlling the shapes that you're making. So I purposely closed in that angle right there. Anyway, so, you know, how many lines do I draw, Mrs. Ross? You have to come up with at least 15 shapes. So if I count all my shapes right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I have 11 shapes right now. Probably if I even just draw one more line, I'm going to get to my 15 shapes. This is kind of interesting here. So you get at least 15 shapes. You can have more shapes than that. Don't get an incredibly large amount of shapes. I see how I've had a really large shape here and some smaller shapes. So think about kind of designing by, you know, thinking, you know, using your brain as you design. I might draw, and I'm also trying not to use the corners necessarily. I think that's more interesting. And I'm trying to keep creating, in this case, triangles, if I can create a triangle. Anyway, okay, so let's say this is my design. I definitely have enough shapes here. And then I'm going to decide where's my center of interest. Let's say I want my center of interest. I could make it up there. I could make it more here or down more here. This is further off the center, so I would think I would make my center of interest right here. I'm going to take a look at my shapes here. Which ones are more dynamic? Which ones are more interesting? Well, these two are about the same size. So to have these two be my two color opposites would be a little more exciting, a little more dynamic, because they're more interesting shapes. And then I can have maybe one of these would be white too, and making it even more exciting. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start painting. We're going to be using even tone wash. Remember when you use the word wash, that means the paper is wet first. So I'm going to get my section wet, and then I'm going to start to add my color after it's wet. Don't forget to get your paints wet too, so they're soft and ready to go for you. I'm going to get a little more water in there. Okay, so I'm just going to put my two, to get started, my two color opposites, and I want it pretty strong because this is going to be my center of interest. So see how it's wet already, and I'm not getting any uneven areas. Probably going to use your flat brushes. You have a smaller one, which is nice for getting in on this particular assignment. It's nice. If I had a smaller area I was working with, I would definitely use a smaller brush. This is just a pretty easy area to get to. I'm going around all my edges and getting the paint spread out. And I want it a little bit darker because I want this to be really bright. Remember, it can't be so dark that you can't see through it. So I'm going to okay, if I don't like something, so I went over the edge, I'm probably just going to get my paper towel, press it down really hard, pull it back up. And that's as much as I'm going to get rid of those lines I just made. Anyway, something like this. This is actually pretty bright. I'm just going to let it dry. So while I'm working on this assignment, while this one's drying, I can't work on any of these other ones right around it because if it touches it, the paint goes across. Since it's a watercolor painting, you have to be careful about drying. So I'll work over here, knowing that right here I'm going to put in a really bright color as well. Okay, I have a painting that's a little further along. You're kind of like, well, how am I going to get 15 variations on my colors? So what I have right here is I have my two opposites really close to each other. Then with each of my two opposites, I have a medium and a light. So here's my color medium, here's a light, here's another one. So, you know, with your 15, you don't just have to get darker, 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 lighter, lighter, lighter. We can do some mixing as well. You also can leave at least one square white, depending, as long as you have all 15. And then you can, you could add some black. I would probably avoid black, but you can add black if you want. So you have to make your own brown. I wanted to show you, because I let this dry overnight, you could use a hair dryer to help it dry faster. When I mean dry, I mean really dry. So I made a couple of these where I had a color going over more than one. So I want to show you what happens if you try some color layering. So what I'm going to do right here, I think I'm going to get some, I'm going to move this further in. I'm going to make kind of a neutral color by adding both my colors together. My neutral's name is brown. And then I'm going to put it over the top of these. And where it overlaps, like remember we have that overlapping transparency thing, it's going to look like it's more colors. So the thing with watercolors, though, is they tend to lift up when they get wet again. It's pretty permanent now, but it doesn't stay permanent for long. So I'm going to get all ready to go. When I'm about to overlap it, then I'm going to get this wet. And I'm going to try and get that color on there fast. So I have my overlapping. So now what I've come up with is two different colors just by overlapping this gray color over the top. Kind of gray, brown, whatever we called it. And look, the purple still wants to come out a little bit, the red violet. Anyway, so that's one way you can make more colors, by overlapping a color that's there that's already dry. And then let's say when it dries, if I don't like it, I can add more layers. So now I just created two colors by overlapping. I'm going to do that again over here. Rather than making a brown, I'm just going to make another layer of the red violet. I just wanted to show you, you'll have some options here. So I'm going to get this wet first. And you do it kind of fast when you're overlapping because the paints tend to want to come out. So I'm going right over the top with my red violet. And watching out for the fact that the paint is going to stir up a little bit once it's dry. So I'm not going to make sure I don't get the rest of my green. I'm kind of painting fast because I'm making a video, so it would probably take a little more time. And then I'm trying to get in here. So the colors, even though I tried to work quickly, the colors the green did come out a little bit, but still I have this interesting new color here. I'm going to try and use my brush to smooth that out a little bit. And it'll be interesting how it dries. So I made, a different color by just one layer, kind of made two colors. And then you can also, of course, just use a brown. So I'm going to make this brown, because I was thinking on this painting, have greens grouped here a little more, and then red violets grouped there. I'm going to just make a brown, but with my two colors, and paint directly with that color. So let's say I don't have to layer, I can just use a color. So I just playing around with this painting so you can kind of see some options. So here's just going ahead and painting with my brown color and not overlapping. So if you don't like the overlapping thing where the colors bleed a little bit, you can always just mix a different color for every one. Let me try, so here's another color we've created. Let me try adding a little black and seeing what happens here. So it's not a bad color, so maybe I'll add that in here. Anyway, so you're going to work with your darks and your lights. You're going to create center of interest. You're going to have at least 15 different shapes with at least 15 color variations. If you have more than 15 shapes, you can leave more than one white. But if there's only 15, only one can be white. But this is the idea. You're composing, working with your opposite colors, and it's kind of a practice in how you can make things dynamic, how you can create flow by repeating your color, and so on. So this is a very thoughtful compositional type painting. And I showed you a lot of samples This one here, I counted the different colors. It does have 15, so they were able to leave more sections white. So anyway, hope you enjoy this. It's a fun little painting. And when you get it done, this one's not done yet, and I probably would change it a little bit too. When you get done, take a photo and turn it in. I'd like you to turn it in when you take your photo. Just leave this part of the worksheet sticking out so I can see that you painted in the worksheet at the same time. So your photo looks like this. Okay, thank you.